I mostly read public domain books here on Glenn Reads Books to You, and they were written a long time ago, so they're usually racist, or sexist, or bigoted. But in there somewhere is a story, and that's why those stories are famous. Other times, I read works from independent authors, and they're delightfully not racist. But they might have adult language or adult situations, like, making sex. So that's your warning. But I'm sure you're grown up enough to handle it. Don't write to me complaining. Sports. I hate sports, but my team is playing against my friend's team from his state. For the love of God damn it. Fine, take a seat, you little idiot. And welcome to the Glenn Reads Books to You mansion. It's a fun little bit where I pretend to live in a mansion and not just recording in my basement. This is where I read the hottest public domain books and short stories. Burp. This week, we're going to keep reading The Legend of the Seventh Virgin by Victoria Holt. You want to hear about the author? Sure you do. Her real name is Eleanor Alice Hibbert. Born September 1st, 1906, and died January 18th, 1993. So lucky for her, she lived long enough to see the band Nirvana. She was an English writer of historical romances. She published several books a year in different literary genres, each genre under a different pen name. Jean Pleedy for fictionalized history of a European royalty. Can't talk. Victoria Holt for gothic romance, and Philippa, Carr for multi-generational family saga, which sounds really boring. Picking up where we left off last week with kind of a history of gothic romance, Horace Walpole's The Castle of Otranto in 1764 introduced what would later become the definitive tropes of the genre, which involves creepy castles, cursed families, gloomy atmosphere. And it was not until Anne Radcliffe's A Sicilian Romance in 1790 that gothic romance began to develop its own legitimate subgenre. Radcliffe kept in many of the same tropes established by Walpole's work, such as in isolated settings and semi-supernatural phenomena. However, her novels featured a female protagonists battling through terrifying ordeals while struggling to be with their true loves. This concept is what ultimately separates gothic romance from its cousin, gothic horror. Female leads would come to dominate gothic romance, especially after the publication of Charles Bronte's Jane Eyre in 1847, which is a young woman struggling to maintain her independence as she falls for a dark, brooding, handsome man. Became a genre-defining plot of gothic romances published in the decades that followed. How much time we got left? Apparently got enough time. There's architecture plays a giant role in these kinds of stories. Gothic literature is intimately associated with the Gothic revival architecture of the same era. English Gothic writers often associated medieval buildings with what they saw as a dark and terrifying period, marked by harsh laws, enforced by torture, and with mysterious, fantastic, and superstitious rituals. Similar to the Gothic revivalists' rejection of the clarity of the rationalism of the neoclassical style of the enlightened establishment, the literary Gothic embodies an apprehension of the joys of extreme emotion and the thrills of fearfulness and awe inherent in the sublime. And a quest for atmosphere. Gothic ruins invoke multiple linked emotions by representing the inevitable decay and the collapse of human creations. Hence the urge to add fake ruins to eye catchers in English landscape parks, which I've never heard of before. Well, that's a grandfather clock telling me to shut up, so why don't we go to the library and read? Well, there you are. Why don't you get yourself settled? Stop squirming. For the love of Christ, just sit still. I'm going to read this story to you so I can get you out of my house. She pushed open the door, and we went into a large hall in which a bowl of daffodils and anemones, don't care, standing on an oak chest. A grandfather clock ticked in the corner. Oh, we all know about those things. Constantly judging you. Oh, you're talking too much. That it has to bing at you, to scream at you, to shut up. And facing the door was a wide staircase. Meliora signed to me to follow her, and we mounted the staircase, and on the landing, she threw open the door. Wait in my bedroom, she said, until I call you. Then she shut the door on me, and I was alone. Oh, I'd never been in such a room before. Oh, there was a soft blue curtains at the big window and a blue coverlet on the bed. Oh, there were pictures on the wall and pale blue lover's knots on the pink wallpaper. What struck me most, though, was the little bookcase near the bed. The books Meliora read. Oh, they brought home to me the gulf between us. So I turned my back on them and I looked out the window. Below me was the parsonage garden, about half an acre, with lawns and flower beds. And working in the garden was the Reverend Charles Martin, Meliora's father. Oh, and as I watched, I saw Meliora appear. Oh, she ran straight to him and began talking earnestly. And I watched intently, knowing that my fate was being discussed. The Reverend Charles was looking startled. Mariola was being emphatic, and they were arguing, and she took his hand and went on talking vehemently. Oh, she was pleading for me, and I wondered why she cared so much. I could see she was winning. Oh, he couldn't refuse anything to his lovely daughter. Yes. And he nodded resignedly as they started to walk toward the house. In a few minutes, the door opened, and there stood Meliora, smiling the smile of triumph. Oh, the Reverend Charles came toward me, and he said in a voice he used for the pulpit, "So you are coming to work for us then, Carenza. I hope you will be happy here." I soon began to realize what a great opportunity Meliora had given me. Later, strange things were to happen about me and to me. That first year at the parsonage seemed to me, while I lived it, the most exciting time of my life. And I suppose it was because that was when the realization came to me that I could begin to climb into another world. Meliora was my opportunity. Oh, I understood that she was attracted to me in the same way that I was by her. What? She had discovered in me this tremendous urge to escape from an environment which I hated. And she was fascinated. Oh, is this going to be like a Prince and the Pauper thing where they're going to switch places? I hope this book goes in that direction. I had my enemies in this house, naturally. The most formidable of those was Miss Kello. Prim, a parson's daughter herself. She was constantly on her dignity, eager to prove that only misfortune had forced her to earn her living. She had an affliction for Meliora, but she was an ambitious woman, and I, who possessed that quality in excess, was quick to observe it in others. Like myself, she was dissatisfied with her lot and planned to improve it. There was Miss Yeo, the cook housekeeper, who looked upon herself as head of the staff, including Miss Kello. There was a few between those two which worked to my advantage. As for Miss Yeo couldn't, as she said, for her life, see why I had been brought into this house. She didn't resent me quite as much as Miss Kello did, and I was inclined at times to take my part, simply because to do so was to be in opposition to Miss Kello. There was the groom, Tom Belter, and the stable boy, Billy Toms. They were inclined to view me favorably. But I would have none of their familiarities, as they gave to Kit and Bess, the two maids, and I quickly made this clear. Even so, they bore me no grudge, and they were inclined to respect me for it. And Kit and Bess regarded me with awe. This was because I was Granny B's granddaughter. Sorry, I just was getting over a cold. And they would sometimes ask me questions about Granny. They wanted her advice and their love affairs or some herb that could improve their complexions. I was able to help them, and this made life more comfortable for me because in exchange, they would do some of the tasks which had been allotted to me. For the first few days of the parsonage, I saw little of Meliora. I thought that she had done her a good deed and left it at that. I handed over to Miss Yeo, who, when she had done complaining about my unnecessary presence, found jobs for me to do, and I did them uncomplainingly for those first days. When Meliora had brought the person to her bedroom on that first day, I had asked if I might run and tell my granny where I was going to be, and permission was readily granted. Meliora had come to me in the kitchen herself and packed a basket of dainty food, which I was to take to my poor brother who had fallen off the tree. So I was in a rather exalted state when I arrived at the cottage to tell the result of my standing at the hire of Trelinket Fair. Granny held me in her arms, nearer to tears than I had ever seen her. "Ah, there, and the parson's good man," she declared. "There's no better in the whole of St. Lamston. And that girl's a good girl. You'll do well there, my love." And I told her about Haggerty and Mrs. Holt and how they had nearly hired me. She laughed with me when I told her how flabbergasted they were to see me walk off with Meliora. We unpacked the basket, but I wouldn't eat a thing. It was for them, I said, and I should eat very well at the parsonage. This in itself was like a dream coming true. Because I hadn't imagined myself playing in the Lady Bountiful, the elation faded during those first few days when I didn't see Meliora and I was set to scouring pots and pans and turning to spit or preparing vegetables and swabbing floors. But there was the compensation of eating well. Oh, no sky blue and stinkers here. But I remember, that's right, because like the soup was blue colored. It's probably just had like, I don't know, some kind of toxins in it. Anyways, the stinkers here. But I remember during those first days, hearing the remark had astonished me. I was cleaning the slate floor of the cooling house where the butter and cheeses and milk were kept. And when Belter came into the kitchen, talked to Mrs. Yeo, I heard him give her a noisy kiss. Gross. That made me more alert. Nothing romantic there. "You give over, young man," said Mrs. Yeo, giggling. Oh, he didn't give over, and there were sounds of scuffling and heavy breathing. Oh, Jesus Christ. And then she said, "Sit down then and stop it. The maids will see you. Wouldn't do to get to know what sort of man you be, Master Belter. Nay, that'll be our secret, eh, Mrs. Yeo? Oh, give over, give over." And then, we got that Granny B's girl here, didn't you know? I've seen 'em sharp a wagon load of monkeys, I reckon. I've seen 'em sharp enough. What beats me, why do we have her here then? Parson finds it hard enough, Lord, you know, to feed us all. Then they brings this one in. And she can give a pretty good account of herself, which comes at the table. Pretty better she be at that, doing her work, I can tell ye. I hate the way she talks. So things be bad then. Oh, you know, if Parson was half a penny, he'll give away a penny. Now they quickly found them something of more interest to them than the Parson's affairs or my arrival, but I went on thinking as I swabbed the floor. Everything had seemed so luxurious in the parsonage. It was astonishing to consider that in this house they found it difficult to make ends meet, and I didn't really believe it. It was just the servants' gossip. It hadn't been a week at the parsonage when I realized my great good fortune. I had been sent to clean Meliora's room while she was having her lesson in the library with Miss Kello. And as soon as I was alone in the room, I went to the bookcase and opened one of the books, and it had pictures in it with captions underneath. I stared at these, trying to understand what they were, and I felt angry and frustrated, like someone shut up in a prison while the most exciting things in the world were happening outside. I wondered if I could teach myself to read if I took one of the books and looked at it, learned the shape of the letters, copied them, remembered them. I forgot all about cleaning the room. I sat on the floor, took one book after another, and tried to make comparisons of letters to give me a clue as to what they meant. And I was still sitting there when Meliora came into the room. "What the hell are you doing?" She demanded. She didn't say hell. I threw that in. I shut the book hastily, said, "I'm cleaning your goddamn room." She didn't say goddamn. I put that in. She laughed. "Nonsense. You were sitting on the floor reading. Were you reading, Karen, sir? I didn't know you could read." "Are you laughing at me?" I cried. "Stop it. I don't think because you hired me at the fair you bought me." "Oh, Karen, sir," she said haughtily as she had spoken to Miss Kello. Then I felt my lips tremble and my face changed at once. "Why are you looking at those books?" she asked gently. "Tell me, please. I want to know." It was the please which made me blurt out the truth. "It's not fair," I said. "I could read if someone would show me." "I say you want to read?" "Of course I want to read and write. More than anything in the world I want to." Well, she sat on the bed, and crossed her pretty feet, and looked at her shiny shoes. "That's easy enough. You must be taught." Who'll teach me?" "I will, of course." That was the beginning. Oh, she did teach me, although she admitted afterwards that she thought I would soon tire of learning attire, ! It was indefatigable. I said that correctly. In the attic, which I shared with Bess and Kit. I would wake with the dawn and write the letters, copying those Meliora had set for me, and I would steal candles from Mrs. Yeo's stored cupboard and bum them half the night, and I threatened Bess and Kit with horrible misfortunes that they should tell on me. And because I was Granny B's granddaughter, they meekly agreed to keep my secret. Meliora was astounded by my progress, and on the day I wrote my name unaided, she was quite overcome by emotion. It's a shame, she said, that you should have to do this other work. You ought to be in the schoolroom. Well, a few days later, Reverend Charles summoned me to his study. He was very thin, with kind eyes, and a skin that seemed to grow more and more yellow every day. Gross. His clothes were too big for him, and his light brown hair was always ruffled and untidy. I didn't care much about himself. He cared a great deal about the poor and the people's souls. And more than anything in the world, he cared for Meliora. Gross. You could see that he thought of her as one of those angels he was always preaching about. Gross, this is weird. And she could do exactly what she liked with him. Yep, gross. So it was lucky for me that one thing she had inherited from him was this caring about other people. Oh, he always looked rather worried, and I had thought this was because he was thinking of all the people who would go to hell. Oh, but after I overheard the conversation between Mrs. Yeo and Belter, it occurred to me that he might be worried about all the food being eaten in his house, and now that he's going to pay for it. My daughter tells me that she taught you to write. That's very good. That's excellent. You want to read and write, do you, Karensa? Yes, very much. Why? I knew I mustn't tell him the real reason, so I said craftily, because I want to read books, sir. Books like the Bible. Well, that pleased him. Then, my child, he said, since you have the ability, you must do all you can to help you. My daughter suggests that you join her with Miss Kello tomorrow, and I shall tell Mrs. Yeo to excuse you from duties that you would be doing at that time. Well, I didn't try to hide my joy because there's no need to, and he patted my shoulder. Now, if you find that you would rather be at your tasks with Mrs. Yeo than those set with Mrs. Kello, you must say so. No, I never shall, I answered vehemently. Go along, he said, and pray earnestly that God will guide you in all you do. Well, the decision, which would never have been made in any other household, caused consternation in this one. I never heard the like, grumbled Mrs. Yeo. Taking that sort of making a scholar of her, mark my words, it'll be Bodmin Asylum for some people before long, and them not far distant from this room where I do stand. I tell ye, Parson's going out of his mind. Bess and Kit just kind of whispered together. That was the result of the spell Granny B had put on Parson. She wanted her granddaughter to be able to read and write like a lady. Just showed, didn't it, that Granny B could do it if she wanted to. I thought, this could be good for Granny B too. Mrs. Kello received me stonily. Oh, I could see she was going to tell me that she, an impoverished gentlewoman, was not going to sink so low as teaching such as I was without a struggle. This is madness, she said when I presented myself. Why? Demanded Meliora. How do you think we can continue with our studies when I have to teach ABC? Well, she already knows it. She can already read and write. Oh, I protest strongly. What are you going to do? Asked Meliora. Give a month's notice? Oh, I might do that. I'd like you to know that I've taught in the house of a baronet. Oh, you ought to mention that more than once, retorted Meliora acidly, and since you so regret leaving that house, perhaps you should try to find another like it. Oh, she could be sharp when she had something to campaign for, and what a champion she was. Sit down, child, said Mrs. Kello, and I obeyed meekly enough because I was anxious to learn she could teach me. She tried to spoil everything, of course, but my desire to learn and to prove her wrong was so great that I astonished not only Meliora but Miss Kello, but myself. Having mastered the art of reading and writing, I could easily improve without anyone's help. Meliora gave me a book after book, which I read adamantly. I learned exciting facts about other countries and what happened in the past. As soon I shall equal Meliora, my secret plan was to surpass her. Oh, all the time I had to fight Miss Kello. She hated me. It was continually trying to prove how foolish it was to waste time on me until I found a way to silence her. I had watched her closely because I had already learned that if you have an enemy, Oh, it's well to know how much about him as you can discover. If you have to attack, you must go for the vulnerable part. Miss Kello had a secret. She was frightened of insecurity. She hated being unmaimed. Seeing it as some slur to her womanhood, I had seen her flinch at the reference to old maids. And I began to understand that she hoped to marry the Reverend Charles. Whenever I was alone with her in the schoolroom, her manner to me would be disdainful. She never praised what I did, and if she had to explain anything, she would sigh with impatience, and I disliked her. And I should have hated her if I hadn't known so much about her and recognized that she was insecure as I was. One day, when Meliora had left the schoolroom and I was putting our books away, I dropped a pile of them, and she gave me an unpleasant laugh. That's not the way to treat books. I couldn't help dropping them, could I? Pray be more respectful when you speak to me. Why should I? Because I have a position here. Because I am a lady, something you will never be. Deliberately, I set the books down on the table. I faced her, and I gave her a look as scornful as the one she had given me. Leastways, I said, lapsing into a dialect and accent which I was learning to drop. Reckon I wouldn't be chasing an old parson, hoping as he'll marry me. She turned pale. How dare you, she cried, but my words had struck as I intended they should. I dare, all right, I retaliated. I dare taunt you as you taunt me. Now, listen, Miss Kello, you treat me right, and I'll treat you right. I won't say a word about you, and you'll give me lessons like I'd be Meliora's sister, see? She didn't answer. She couldn't. Her lips were trembling too much. And I went out, knowing it was my victory. And it was proved to be. In the future, she did her best to help me learn and stop taunting me. And when I did, she said so. I felt as powerful as Julius Caesar, and those exploits were fascinating me. No one could have been more delighted than Meliora at my progress. And when I beat her at lessons, she was genuinely delighted, and she looked on me as a plant she was cultivating. And when I didn't do so well, she was reproachful, and I was discovering her to be a strange girl. Not the simple creature I imagined. She'd be determined as I, or almost, and her life seemed to be governed by what she considered right and wrong, probably instilled by her father. She would do anything, however daring or bold, if she believed it to be right. And she ruled the household because she had no mother, and her father doted on her. So when she said that she needed a companion, a personal maid, I became that. It was, as Miss Yeo continually complained, something she never heard the like of, but the parsonage was like a madhouse, she reckoned, so she couldn't be expected to know what happened next. I was given a room next to Meliora's and was spending a great deal of time with her. Now, I mended her clothes, I washed them, I shared her lessons, I went for walks with her, and she was very fond of teaching me and taught me to ride, take me round and round the meadow on her pony. It didn't occur to me how unusual this was. I simply believed that I had made a dream which was coming true, as Granny had told me that it would. Well, it seems as good a place as any for me to take you to a different location here in my mansion while I read to you about the latest upcoming books from Penguin Random House. What's the new location? I'm sick of going to the closet. I like playing guitar to you while I tell you about new books, but the closet's too weird, a little too intimate. People judge us for being in there for too long, so I think what seems more reasonable is the basement. Let's go to the basement of the mansion, and I will tell you all about it. You get down there, and I'll see you there. Oh, there you are. I see you finally made it down to my leaky basement. You can hear by the water dripping sound effect that I added to this. Did you want to hear about a new book as I play this guitar to you gently? Sure you do. It's called Smolder by Laurel K. Hamilton. It's already been out for quite a while. I don't know what the difference is. It's supposed to be a new release, but whatever. It's supposed to be gothic horror and paranormal fiction. Want to hear about it? Sure you do. Vampire hunter Anita Blake is no stranger to killing monsters. It's part of her job as a preternatural U.S. Marshal. After all, but her experience isn't enough to stop something that is bent on destroying everything and everyone she loves. Anita Blake is engaged to Jean-Claude, the new vampire king of America. Insane. Humans think she's gone over the side of the monsters. The vampires fear that their new king has fallen under the spell of the most powerful necromancer in 1,000 years. In the midst of wedding preparations, including getting Edward, a.k.a. U.S. Marshal Ted Forrester, fitted as best man, this is insane. Anita gets a call that the local police need her expertise at a brutal murder scene linked to a nationwide slaughter of vampires and humans, dubbed the Sunshine Murders. This is completely insane. Everything's just scrambling around nutsos. But there's more than just a murderer to catch. An ancient evil has arrived in St. Louis to challenge Jean-Claude for his crown, his wife, his life, Anita, and all that they hold dear, even Jean-Claude's new powers as king and Anita's necromancy. It isn't enough. They need to embrace the triumphant or allow primeval darkness to spread across the country, possessing the first vampires and then humans. Evil will triumph unless Jean-Claude and Anita can prove that love conquers all. If you like a box of bugs, you just take a box of cockroaches, just a box of them with like a lid on it, but then you can like see through the lid, like some kind of glass lid, and you just have all these bugs crawling all over each other, just crawling all over the top and underneath each other, just spilling around and whatever. That's what this book is like with all of its plot points. And that book is called Smolder by Laurel K. Hamilton. You can get it for $28 at hardcover from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Bookshop.org, Hudson Booksellers, Powell's, Target, and you know they made it when they're finally on the sweet, heated, warm shelves of Walmart. Well, with that, why don't we go back to our story? I'll get you back. The sooner you sit down, the sooner I can get you out of my house. So sit down. Just sit. All right, let's get started. Meliora and I were about the same height, but I was much more slender than she when she gave me dresses which she no longer wanted. I only had to take them in to make them fit. I remember the first time I went home to the cottage wearing a blue and white gingham dress, white stockings, and black shiny shoes, all gifts from Meliora. I carried a basket on my arm because whenever I visited the cottage, I took something. Miss Yeo's remarks had been the only disconcerting note to a perfect day. As I packed the basket, she said, Miss Meliora be like Parson, very fond of giving away what you can't afford to. I tried to forget that, Mark. I told myself it was just another of Miss Yeo's grumbles. It was like a tiny dark cloud in the summer sky. Yeah. And as I walked through the village, I saw Hetty Pengaster, the farmer's daughter, and before that day I had set myself up for hire at Tree Lincoln Fair. I had thought of Hetty with envy. Oh, she was the farmer's only daughter. Though he had two sons, Thomas, who farmed with him, and Reuben, who worked at Pengrant's, the builders, and was that young man who had thought he had seen the seventh virgin. Oh, are we finally getting to the story again? Because this has been going off in a weird little side tornado that I just want to get back to the point of this book. When the abyss wall collapsed and consequently had become pisky-mazed, Hetty was the darling of the household. Plumpity pretty, in an overripe way which made the old women shake their heads prophetically and say that Pengasters ought to watch out that Hetty didn't get a baby in the cradle before she had a wedding ring on her finger. Oh, this is gross. I saw what they meant. It was in the way she walked. Oh, don't. In the sidelong glances she gave the men. Stop. In her thick, sensuous lips. Ugh, she always had a ribbon in her auburn hair. Oh, that's the worst part. And her dresses were always showy and low cut. She was all but affianced to Saul Cundy, who worked in the Fetter mine. A strange alliance this would be, for Saul was a serious man who must have been 10 years older than Hetty. It would be a marriage approved by her family, for Saul was no ordinary miner. He was known as Captain Saul and had the power to employ men. Oh, he was clearly the leader, and one would have thought him scarcely the sort to come courting Hetty. Perhaps Hetty himself or herself thought this and wanted to have some fun before settling down to a sober marriage. Well, she mocked me now. Well, if it isn't Karen Sakarli, all dressed up and fit to kill. Oh, I retorted in a tone that I had learned from Meliora. I'm visiting my grandmother. Oh, are you then, me lady? Mindy, don't soil your hands with the likes of we. Oh, I heard her laughing as I went on, and I didn't mind in the least. In fact, I was pleased. Why had I ever envied Hetty Pengaster? What was a ribbon in the hair, shoes on the feet, besides the ability to invite and read and talk like a lady? Oh, I had rarely felt as happy as I did when I continued on my way to the cottage. I found Granny alone, and her eyes shone with pride when she kissed me. Oh, no matter how much I learned, I would never cease to love Granny and yearn for her approval. Where's Joe? I asked. Granny was exultant. Oh, I knew Mr. Pooh at the vet, who has good business out in Maltler Way. He had called at the cottage. He had heard tell that Joe was good with animals, and he could do well with ones like that. Someone who could work with them. Oh, he would train him and make a vet of him, maybe. So, Joe's gone to Mr. Poland? What do you think? 'Twas a chance of a lifetime. Vet. I was planning for him to be a doctor. Well, vet is a very good profession, lovey. That's not the same, I replied wistfully. It's a start, like. Get his keep for a year, and then he'll get paid, and Joe be happy as a king. Don't think of nothing but they animals. I repeated Granny's words. 'Tis a start. 'Tis a load off my mind, too, Granny admitted. Oh, now I see you two settled like I be at peace. Granny, I said, I reckon anything you want can be yours. Who'd have thought it'd be sitting here in buckled shoes and a gingham dress with lace at the collar? Well, who'd have thought it, she agreed. I dreamt it. I wanted it so much that it came, Granny. It's there, isn't it, the whole world? It's there if you know how to take it. Well, Granny put her hand over mine. Don't you forget, lovey, life ain't all that easy. But if someone else has the same dream, what did you do if you want a piece of the world as you? Oh, you've had luck all along a parson's daughter, but don't you forget that was chance. And there's a good chance and a bad chance. No, I wasn't really listening. I was too confident, and I was faintly chagrined. It was true that it was only the vet whom Joe had gone, and if it had been Dr. Hillard, I would have liked some magician who had found the keys to the kingdom on the earth. Still, it was a start for Joe, and there was more to eat in the cottage now. People were coming to see Granny, and they believed in her again. Look at that granddaughter of hers, warming her way to the parsonage. Look at that grandson, Mr. Pollard, riding himself to the cottage. Asked, could I train him, please? What was that? But witchcraft. Magic! Exclamation point. Call it what you will. Any old woman who could do that could charm the warts off you, and could give you the right powder to cure this and that. Could look into the future and tell you that you belonged, what you needed to do. So Granny was prospering too. We were all prospering. There had never been such times. I was singing to myself as I made my way back to the parsonage. Melior and I were together a great deal now that I was a fit companion for her. I imitated her in lots of ways, walking, speaking, remaining still when I spoke, keeping my voice low, holding in my temper, being cold instead of hot. It was fascinating study. Mrs. Yeo had ceased to grumble. Bess and Kid had ceased to marvel. Belter and Billy Toms no longer called out when I passed. That's gross. And they even called me Miss. Miss. And even Miss Kello was polite to me. I had no duties in the kitchen at all. My task was to look after Meliora's clothes, do her hair, walk with her, read with her, and talk to her. Talk to her. The life of a lady. I assured myself, and it was now 2 years since I had put myself up for higher trinklet fare. I could say it, but I had much to achieve. Oh, it was always a little downcast when Meliora received invitations to went off a visit. Sometimes Mrs. Kello accompanied her, sometimes her father, and I never did. None of those invitations, naturally, was extended to Meliora's maid, companion, or whatever one liked to call her. She often went to call the doctor's house with her father. On very rare occasions, she went to the abbess, and never went to the dower house because, as she explained to me, Kim's father was a sea captain, and he was rarely at home. And during the vacation, Kim wasn't expected to entertain, but when she went to the abbess, she often found him there, because he was a friend of Justin's. After Meliora returned home from a visit to the abbess, she was already subdued. I guess that place meant something to her, too. Either that or the people. I can see the reason for this. It must be wonderful to go boldly into the abbess's guest. And one day that would happen to me. I was sure of it. One Easter Sunday, I learned more about Meliora than I had ever known before. Sundays were naturally busy days at the parsonage because of all the church services. And the sound of the bells went on for most of the day, and since they were so near, they appeared to be right in the house. I always went to the morning service, which I enjoyed. Chiefly, I have to admit, because I would be wearing one of Mariola's straw hats and one of her gowns. And sitting in the parsonage's pew, I felt grand and important. Oh, I love the music too, which always put me in a state of exaltation, and I like to praise and give thanks to God who made dreams come true. The sermons, I found dull, for the Reverend Charles was not an inspired speaker, and when during them I studied the congregation, my eyes invariably came to rest on the abbess pews. These were at the side of the church, set apart from the rest. There were usually quite a number of servants from the house and the church. The front row, where the family sat, was always almost empty. Immediately behind the abbess pew, there was the lovely glass window, said to be some of the best in Cornwall. Blue, red, green, and mauve, glinting in the sunshine. Oh, they were exquisite. It had been given to the church by St. Lamston 100 or more years before, and on two other walls on the other side of the pews were memorials dedicated to past St. Lawrence's. Even in the church, one had the impression that St. Lawrence's owned it like everything else. The whole family in the pew was in the pew this day. I suppose because it was Easter, there was Sir Justin, whose face seemed more purple, just as the parson seemed more yellow. Every time I saw him, there was his wife, Lady St. Lamston, tall, with a long, somewhat hooked nose, very imperious and arrogant looking. Oh, and the two sons, Justin and Johnny, who hadn't changed a great deal since the day I encountered them in the walled garden. Justin looked cold and calm, and he was more like his mother than Johnny was. Johnny was short compared to his brother, and lacked Justin's dignity. Oh, his eyes kept roaming round the church as though he were looking for someone. I love the Easter service, and the flowers, which decorated the altar. I love the joyous singing of Hosanna, and I felt, I can't hear the word Hosanna without thinking of Tim and Eric, and I knew that what it must be like to be risen from the dead. While during the sermon I studied the occupants of the abbess pews, and I was thinking of Sir Justin's father fancying Granny, and how she went to him in secret for Pedro's sake. I wonder what I should have done in Granny's place. Then I was aware that beside me, Meliora was also studying the abbess pew. Oh, her expression was rapt and completely absorbed. She just looked straight at Justin St. Lawrence, and there was a sheen of pleasure on her face. That's a way of describing that. And looked prettier than I had ever seen her look before. She is 15, I said to myself. Old enough to be in love. There's love in young Justin St. Lawrence. I hope he's 15 too. There seemed to be no end to what I was discovering about Meliora. Oh, I must find out more. I must make her talk about Justin. I kept my eyes on the St. Lawrence family, and before the service was over, I knew who Johnny was looking for. Hetty Pengaster! ! Meliora and Justin, oh, that was understandable, but Johnny, and Hetty Pengaster! ! That afternoon, the sun shone warmly for the first time that year, and Meliora had a fancy to go outdoors. Well, we put on big shady hats, because Meliora said we mustn't let the sun spoil our complexions. Her fair one was very susceptible to the sunshine, and she freckled easily. My olive skin seemed indifferent. All the time I liked to put on a shady hat because it was what ladies did. Meliora stood in solemn mood, and I wondered whether it had anything to do with seeing Justin in church that morning. He mustn't be 22, I thought, which would be about 7 years older than she was. To him, he's 22 years old. That's disturbing. 22 to 15. Okay, gonna keep reading. To him, she would seem only a child. Yes, exactly. I was becoming worldly wise, and I wondered whether it would be considered fitting for a future Sir Justin St. Larnison to marry a parson's daughter. I thought that she's gonna confide in me when she said, I want to tell you something about this afternoon, Karensa. Well, she led the way on our walk, she often did, and she had a way of reminding me, now that there was the mistress, and I didn't forget that I owed my present contentment to her. I was surprised when she led the way across the parsonage, leading to a hedge which divided the garden from the churchyard. There was a gap in this hedge, and we passed through it. She turned to smile and said, "Oh, Karensa," she said, it's good to be able to go out with you instead of Miss Kello. And she's rather prim, don't you think? Yeah, she's got a job to do. Strange how I stood up for a woman who wasn't there. Oh, I know, poor old Kelly, but Karensa, you deserve as a chaperone. Don't you think it's amusing? I agreed. Now, if you had been my sister, I suppose you would have been plagued by a chaperone. We picked our way through the gravestones toward the church. What are you going to tell me? I asked. Well, I want to know, show you something first. How long have you been in St. Lamson, Karensa? I came by when I was 8 years old. Oh, you're 15 now, so it must have been 7 years ago. Yeah, you wouldn't have heard. It's 10 years since it happened. Well, she led me round the side of the church where one of the two more recent headstones rose from the ground, and standing before one as though reading the inscription, she beckoned to me. Read it, she said. Mary Ann Markin, I said. 38 years in the midst of life, we are in death. That was my mother. She was buried here 10 years ago. Now read the name below. Karensa Martin Karensa. She nodded, smiling at me with satisfied expression. Karensa, I love your name. I loved it the moment I heard it. Do you remember? Oh, you're in the wall. You said, it's not it, it's Miss Karensa Carly. Verb. It's strange how you can recall days and days in one little minute. I remembered when you said that this Karensa Martin was my sister, you see. It says age 3 weeks and 2 days into the date. It's the same as the one above. Some of those gravestones have little stories to tell, don't they, if you go around reading them? Hey, so your mother died when Karensa was born? Mariola nodded. I wanted a sister, and I was 5 years old, and it seemed as if I waited for her for years. And when she was born, I was so excited. And I thought we could play together right away. When they told me that I had to wait until she was grown up, I remember how I kept running to my father, saying, I've waited. Is she big enough to play yet? And I made plans for Karensa, and I knew that she was going to be Karensa even before she was born. Oh, my father wanted a Cornish name for her, and he said that it was a beautiful name because it meant peace and love, which he said were the best things in the world. My mother used to talk about her when she was certain she would have a girl, so we talked about Karensa. And it went wrong, you see. She died, and my mother died too, and everything was different then. Nurses, governesses, housekeepers, and what I had longed for was a sister. I wanted a sister more than anything in the world. See? Well, that was why when I saw you standing there, because your name was Karensa, you see what I mean? And I thought it was because you were sorry for me. I'm sorry for all the people on the hiring platform, but I couldn't bring them home, could I? Papa was always worried about bills as it is, she laughed. I'm glad you came. I looked at the gravestone and thought of the chance which had given me all I wanted. It might have happened so differently. If that young Karensa had lived, if her name hadn't been Karensa, where should I be now? I thought of Haggerty's little pig eyes, Mrs. Rolt's thin mouth, and Sir Justin's purple complexion, and was overawed by the sequence of events called chance. Oh, we were closer than ever to our talk in the graveyard. Meliora wanted to make believe that I was her sister, and I was nothing loath. When I brushed her hair that night, I started to talk about Justin St. Lamston. What do you think of him? I said. I saw the quick color in her cheeks. He's handsome, I think. Oh, more so than Johnny? Oh, Johnny, yeah. Her tone was contemptuous. Does he talk to you much? Who? Justin? He's always kind when I go in there, but he's busy. He's working. He'll graduate this year, and then he'll be home all the time. Well, she is smiling secretly, thinking of the future when Justin would be home all the time, and riding through the country, one would encounter him, and then she called on her father, he'd be there. You like him? I said, and she nodded and smiled. Better than, Kim, I ventured. Kim? Oh, he's wild, she wrinkled her nose. I like Kim, but Justin, he's like a ... knight. Sir Galahad, or Sir, Lancelot. Kim is not like that. I thought of Kim's carrying Joe through the woods and to our cottage at night. I did not believe Justin would have done that for me. I thought of Kim lying to Meliora about the boy who had fallen off the tree. Meliora and I were like sisters. We're going to share secrets and adventures our whole lives. I prefer Justin St. Lawrence, but Kim would be my knight. Miss Kello had one of our bouts of neuralgia, and Meliora, who is always sympathetic towards the sick, insisted on her lying down. And she herself drew the curtains, gave Miss Yeo orders that were not to be disturbed until 4 o'clock when tea was to be taken to her. Having looked after Miss Kello, Meliora sent for me and said that she fancied a ride. My eyes sparkled, because naturally she could not go unaccompanied, and I was sure that she'd prefer my company to Belter's. Meliora mounted her pony, and I was on Cherry, who used to be the pony's cart. I hoped I should be seen by some of the St. Lawrencetown people as I rode through the village, particularly Hattie, whom I had noticed more since I was aware of Johnny St. Lamston's interest in her. However, we were only seen by a few children who stood aside as we passed. The boys pulled their forelocks out of the girls, curtsied, and it's a fact which pleased me. In a short time, we were on the moor, and the beauty of the scenery took my breath away. It was awe-inspiring. There was no sign of any dwelling, nothing but moor and sky and the tors. Okay, the Tors. I was reading it weird. I'm like, I think I skipped a line. It just says Tors. But apparently Tors. Let's look up the word Tors. Is it a thing? It's a rocky peak. That wasted everyone's time. Which here and there rose up from the moorlands. The scene could, I knew, be somber in shadow, but this day it was sparkling. And the sun caught the little rivulets, which were there and tumbled over the boulders. And it turned to them, it's silver, and we could see the moisture of the grass shining like diamonds. Meliora lightly touched her pony's flanks and broke into a canter. Oh, and I followed, and we left the road. We went over the grass till Meliora drew up before a strange formation of stone as I came up behind her, for her pony was fleeter than mine, and I saw that there were 3 slabs of stone standing upright to the ground, supporting the slab, which was resting on top of them. Eerie, commented Meliora. Look round. There's not a sign of anyone. We're here, Karensa, you and I, alone with that. Do you know what it is? It's a burial ground. Years and years ago. 3,000 or 4,000 of years before Christ was born, and people who lived here made that grave. You couldn't move those stones if you tried for the rest of your life. Doesn't it make you feel, strange, Karensa, to stand here beside that and think of those people? I looked at her, with the wind tugging at her fair hair, which fell in curls, beneath the riding hat. She was very pretty, and earnest, too. What does it make you feel, Karensa? There isn't much time. Time for what? To have what you want? To get what you want? You say strange things, Karensa. I'm glad you do. I can't bear to know what people are going to say next. I do with Miss Kello, and even Papa, which I'm never sure with you. Justin St. Lawrencetown, she turned away. He hardly notices me to speak to. She said sadly, there isn't much time, but look how long it takes to grow up. You think so because you're 15. And each year passes seems long when you've only lived 15 years and you only got 15 to compare it with. When you have 40 or 50, 1 year seems less because you compare with the At the 40 or 50 you lived. Well, who told you? My granny. She's a wise woman. I've heard of her. Best kid talk of her. They say she has quote-unquote powers, which can help people. She was thoughtful. Then she said, this is called a quoit. Papa told me that they were built by Celts, the Cornish, who had been much longer than the English here. We tethered our ponies for a while and sat leaning against the stones while they nibbled the grass and talked of me with the conversations that she had had with her father about the antiquities of Cornwall. And I listened intently, and I was proud of belonging to a people who had inhabited this island longer than the English, who had left these oddly disturbing monuments to their dead. Well, it can't be far from the Dairies country, said Meliora at length, rising to indicate that she wanted to mount. Don't tell me that you've never heard of the Duresses. Oh, they're the richest people in the neighborhood. They own acres and acres. More than the St. Lawrenstons? Oh, much more. Let's go. Let's get lost. It's always such fun to get lost and find your way after. And she mounted her pony, and we were off. She leading. That's rather dangerous, she called over her shoulder, more concerned for me. Who is not so expert then for herself, and brought her pony to a standstill. I came up beside her, and we walked our ponies over the grass. Well, you could easily get lost in the moor because there's so much that looks alike. You have to find a landmark, like that tor over there, which you just learned about. I think it's Doris Tor, and if I know it, that's where we are. How do you know where you are if you're not sure it's Doris Tor? She had laughed and said to me, "Come on!" And we were climbing as we made our way to the tor, and it was a stony country. Now, for the tor itself was on a hillock, a strange, twisted shape in gray. Stone that from a distance could be mistaken for a man of giant proportions. We dismounted once more, tethered the ponies to a thick bush, and together we scrambled up the hillock to the tor. I hate the word tor. It's being said a lot right now in this part. Oh, it was steeper than we had thought when we reached the top. Meliora, looking like a dwarf beside a giant, leaned against the stone and cried excitedly that she was right. This was Doris country. Look, she cried. Following her gaze, I saw the great mansion. Gray stone walls. Oh, finally we're getting somewhere. Battlement towers, a massive fortress, looking like an oasis in a desert, for the house is surrounded by gardens, and I glimpsed the trees laden with the fruit blossom and the green lawns. Doris Manor, she informed me. It's like a castle. Oh, it is. Though the Doris are said to be the richest people in East Cornwall. They're doomed, some say. Doomed with a house like that and all those riches? Ah, Karen's, you always think in terms of worldly possessions. Don't you ever listen to Papa's sermons? No. Do you? No. But I know without listening that treasures on earth and all that. In any case, for all their money, the Dorises are doomed. What sort of doomed? Madness. There's madness in the family. Oh, thank God we're finally getting somewhere. It comes out every now and then. People say that it's a good thing that there aren't any sons to carry on the line and that the generation will see the end of the Dorises and their curse. Well, that's a good thing. Well, they don't think so. They want their name to be carried on and all that. People always do. I wonder why. Now, it's a sort of pride, I said. It's never dying because there's always part of you living on through your children. Well, that's a pithy little spot for us to stop and go down to the smoking room and try to review what the hell we just read. There you are. Took you a long time. Hurry up and light yourself a cigarette here in the smoking room as we sit amongst my wife's caged birds that she thought was a great idea to put down here. I gotta pee, so we'll make this quick. What happened? Not a lot. There's not really any chapters going on here. I'm just kind of reading however many pages I can get out. So far, we are about 100 pages in, and not a lot's going on. Girl lives with witch grandma. girl's brother loves animals and gets himself in trouble for it, and then he winds up having to be saved through a lie, which I'm sure is going to come back later. But he gets saved through a lie, so he's going to get killed by rich people because he was, trying to help the animals that they're hunting. I don't know, whatever. Gets caught in a man trap, and then after that, rich person comes along and helps and keeps the secret, which is going to come around. I can guarantee it. And then later on, she has to go get a job because now she got a sick grandma and an unfortunate brother. Has to go stand on a stage at the market square, kind of like they did with like slavery and stuff, just be like, hire me. And so she winds up getting hired by this girl and Meliora, and then they wind up going back to her place and everything. So life is good. So what we're reading now is just nothing but I get to wear Meliora's old dresses. I don't have to work as a maid anymore because now Meliora is teaching me how to read, and I get to learn from the teacher who's got the crush on the dad pastor, and I'm smart and I'm working it against her, so she's not mean to me. Whatever. I kind of want to get to the whole haunted Seventh Virgin portion, but man, we're 100 pages in and it's still exposition. So not a lot to report here, except that the poor, is she poor? She wasn't really poor. She was too good to go try to stand on a stage to get hired. So that's got to be real, real poor. She's too good for that. So she's like middle class. She's a middle class witch granddaughter that doesn't want to do this, but things are working out for her. So now she gets to live the life of a rich person. There's those birds. God damn it. That's kind of it. I'm hoping the next batch I read, I'm realizing I made a mistake reading this book. This book is 400 pages long, and I can't spend all night reading. So I was thinking, okay, tonight I'm going to read 70 pages. That's a big mistake. I'm not going to read 70 pages. I'm going to be doing this till like midnight or something. And also, who wants to listen to an episode that's like 3 hours long? That'd be like the worst thing in the world. Got to keep it short and sweet and punchy. Got to keep them wanting more for the 5 people that listen. So hopefully in the next portion I read, there'll be more going on and we can actually get interested in what we're reading. But right now it's just kind of rags to riches or whatever. So with that, I'm sure even though you're not invited, you're going to come back to my place against my will next week, and then I will just probably see you then. Well, it appears you found me in the part of the podcast I hate the most, where I tell you all about the places on the internet where you can find me. You can tell I hate this because of the sound effects making it sound like a stormy night in the drawing room of the damned. Now, there's that. Are you cool? I like cool people. It's the reason why I got involved in this business to begin with, just to meet cool people, not losers. So if you're cool, feel free to go over to my website, nuzzlehouse.com, which just points you to my link tree. Everything's on the link tree. Just go to the link tree if you want to see where I am. And of course, link tree has the dumbest URL in the world. linktr.ee/nuzzlehouse. It's the dumbest thing. If you go to nuzzlehouse.com, it's just going to reroute you over there after giving you some weird error about it not being secure. I hate it. I hate the internet. But if you go there, you get to hear some of the other stuff that I and my wife work on, like the Radio Mystery Theater show, where we try to recreate the same show that used to be on in the 70s, but they don't make any episodes anymore. So we make our own, and we just steal all their commercials. And also, just in the curious mind, we made a Christmas album. If you go to our link tree, you can see that we made a Christmas album. It's the first thing we did after getting married, which I think everyone should do when they get married, is start talking about the Christmas album they're going to make. And we're working on a new show where we give relationship advice by reading paranormal smut. And since I think you might be cool, you can always just email me directly, glenn.nuzzles@gmail.com. But don't email if you're a nerdling or a dork. Now, back to business. can't believe I drank all of them already. There's got to be one left.